You think your morality protects you. You operate under the delusion that if you play by the rules, act with common decency, and sacrifice your own desires for the sake of others, the world will eventually reward your virtue. This is the exact lie that will ensure your destruction. The world does not reward the good. It rewards the prepared. It rewards those who understand human nature not as they wish it to be, but as it actually operates in the dark. Look closely at your own life. You will see the fractures. You will see the times you were overlooked for a promotion. The moments your blind loyalty was repaid with cold indifference. The times your personal boundaries were trampled simply because someone knew you lacked the spine to enforce them. You are currently watching people with half your talent and a fraction of your character take exactly what you want, entirely because they are willing to operate outside the invisible cage of politeness you have locked yourself inside. This ends today. To become unbreakable, you must stop running on the fairy tales of fairness and start studying the cold architecture of power. We are going to dismantle the weak operating system you were taught to run on from childhood. We are going to replace it with 8 ruthless laws of survival derived from the sharpest political mind in human existence. These are not suggestions for a happier, more peaceful life. They are the absolute mechanics of invulnerability. Listen closely, take notes, and prepare to strip away every illusion you hold about the people around you. First, strip away the delusion of inherent altruism. You have been conditioned to assume the best in people. You grant the benefit of the doubt as if it were a mandatory tax you owe to society. You assume that the people in your inner circle, your co-workers, and your associates have your best interests at heart. This is a cognitive flaw engineered by a system that requires you to be docile. Machiavelli understood a brutal, unyielding truth. Men are driven entirely by necessity and self-interest. To rely on someone's good graces is to hand them the knife to cut your throat. People do not want to destroy you out of pure malice. They simply want to advance their own position. If you happen to be standing on the rung of the ladder they need to step on, they will crush your fingers without a second thought, and they will justify it to themselves later. You must stop taking this personally. It is not malice. It is gravity. You must audit your circle right now. Look at every alliance, every friendship, every professional relationship, and ask yourself a singular, uncomfortable question. What happens to their behavior when my utility to them drops to zero? If your value to someone is entirely based on what you provide, your money, your access, your emotional labor, your ability to solve their problems, that is not a relationship. That is a transaction disguised as affection. The moment you stop paying the toll, the affection evaporates. If you continue to navigate the world blind to the transactional nature of human interaction, you will always remain the victim of sudden betrayals. You will be continuously blindsided by the coworker who steals your credit, or the friend who vanishes during your darkest hour. Accept the self-interest of others. Anticipate it. Factor it into every calculation you make. When you expect people to act in their own self-interest, their actions become completely predictable, and predictability gives you absolute control over the outcome. Second, master the art of strategic paranoia. You think trust is an innate virtue. You believe that being suspicious makes you a cynic, a pessimist, someone broken by the world. You wait for clear, undeniable, glaring evidence of deceit before you take steps to protect yourself. By the time the evidence is undeniable, the knife is already entirely submerged in your back. The fox survives in the wild because he smells the trap long before he sees the bait. You must develop an almost predatory sensitivity to the shifting winds of human behavior. People do not suddenly wake up one morning and decide to betray you. Betrayal is a methodical process. It is a slow erosion of respect, a subtle shifting of alliances, a series of microaggressions that test the waters of your tolerance. When people are preparing to act against you, their baseline behavior fundamentally changes. The overly talkative associate goes completely silent in meetings. The reliable ally starts making small, uncharacteristic excuses to avoid committing to plans. They begin distancing themselves, emotionally, to psychologically justify the betrayal they are about to commit. You must cultivate strategic paranoia. This does not mean you live in terror or push everyone away. It means you observe everything and attach your emotions to nothing. You watch how people act when they think they have leverage over you. You watch how they speak about their former friends to you, knowing they will speak about you exactly the same way to others. Those who wait for the blade to fall are always surprised by its sharpness. If you rely on blind trust rather than sharp observation, you are outsourcing your personal security to the conscience of another human being. That is the absolute definition of weakness. Protect your flanks before the attack is even launched. Third, establish an absolute monopoly on consequences. You think boundaries are established by communicating your feelings. You sit down, you express your discomfort, you use therapy language, and you expect the other party to respect your limits out of basic human decency. You are negotiating with predators, using the language of prey. A boundary without a brutal consequence is nothing more than a suggestion. The lion does not negotiate its territory by explaining its feelings to the hyena. It enforces its territory through the absolute certainty of violence. In your modern life, this violence is social, professional, and psychological. If you cannot inflict a consequence, you have no boundaries whatsoever. Predators in the boardroom and in your social circles constantly probe for weakness. They test the fence. They make a slight, passive-aggressive dig at your expense, masked as a joke. They cross a minor line just to see what you will do. They watch your reaction closely. If your reaction is passive, if you smile through the disrespect to keep the peace, the fence is completely broken. They will pour through the breach and take everything. You must become completely comfortable with confrontation. You must be willing to introduce sudden, freezing tension into a room. When someone disrespects you, you must stop the conversation dead. You look them directly in the eye, you drop your voice, and you make the social cost of their behavior infinitely higher than the reward they got from the joke. You do not yell. You do not lose your temper. Emotional outbursts are leaks of power. You simply let the silence suffocate them. You cannot control what people try to do to you. You can only control the exact price they pay for doing it. Comment, I am the architect of my own boundaries. Fourth, enforce emotional austerity. You crave external validation. You want the people around you to like you, to approve of your choices, to validate your existence. You soften your edges. You compromise your internal standards. And you bite your tongue because the thought of being disliked terrifies your nervous system. The desire to be loved is the ultimate leverage you freely hand to your enemies. Machiavelli stated clearly that it is infinitely safer to be feared than loved. Love is completely volatile. It is maintained by the shifting whims, moods, and hormonal balances of other people. Fear, or in the modern context, profound respect driven by the cold knowledge of your capabilities, is maintained entirely by your own actions. When you desperately need someone to like you, they control you absolutely. They can alter your behavior, dictate your schedule, and drain your resources simply by withholding their approval. You become a puppet, dancing on the strings of their validation. Emotional austerity means severing those strings with a machete. You must reach a psychological state where the disapproval of others means absolutely nothing to your internal architecture. Stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop over-apologizing for taking up space. When you make a decision, let it stand in absolute silence. Let people be uncomfortable with your choices. Your silence will project an overwhelming aura of power. People automatically project their own hidden insecurities onto a silent, unmovable presence. If you remain addicted to the warmth of being liked, you will be consumed entirely by the cold reality of human opportunism. Starve your need for approval, and you starve your enemies of their only weapon against you. Fifth, Weaponize your generosity. You give freely. You give your time, your hard-earned money, your specialized expertise, your emotional support. You operate under the assumption that by giving constantly, you are building a massive reservoir of goodwill that you can draw from later when you need help. You are entirely wrong. Unconditional generosity breeds toxic entitlement, not gratitude. When you give without constraint or friction, people stop seeing your gifts as favors and immediately start categorizing them as basic rights. The moment you finally say no, the moment you stop giving, they will hate you intensely, far more than if you had never given them anything in the first place. Machiavelli warned heavily against the trap of liberality. To maintain a reputation for generosity, you have to keep giving until you bankrupt yourself financially and emotionally. Your resources are strictly finite. Your daily energy is finite. Every single ounce of effort you spend on someone who does not offer a strategic return is an ounce of power drained directly from your own reserves. Your generosity must immediately become calculated. Give rarely, and only when it serves a specific, predetermined purpose. When you do grant a favor, make sure the recipient understands the heavy weight of it. Do not let them brush it off with a quick text message of thanks. Bind them to you with the unspoken but heavily felt debt of your assistance. Make them understand exactly what it cost you to help them. People only value what they pay a high price for. If you bleed yourself dry making things easy for the sake of others, you will find yourself empty-handed, exhausted, and abandoned when the wolves finally circle your door. Sixth, eradicate all half measures. When you are wronged, you respond with half measures. You forgive, but secretly hold a grudge. You cut someone off, but leave a small line of communication open just in case. You demote an enemy in your business, but keep them employed in the building. You think this shows mercy. You think this proves you are the bigger person. What it actually proves is that you lack the stomach for survival. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. This is the darkest, coldest, and most critical law of human survival. A wounded enemy is the most dangerous entity on earth. They have nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to plot your destruction. If you strike, you must strike with such absolute finality that the threat is permanently extinguished. People consistently return to situations they haven't fully destroyed. This applies strictly to toxic relationships, failing business ventures, and destructive personal habits. You keep the toxic ex's number in your phone. You maintain light contact with the jealous friend who secretly undermines your ambitions. You are actively leaving a loaded weapon in their hand, hoping they won't decide to pull the trigger again. You must learn how to amputate. When a person proves they are a threat to your peace of mind, your long-term vision, or your resources, the severance must be absolute and final. No final conversations to hash things out. No search for mutual closure. Closure is a myth invented by the weak to extend contact with people who are hurting them. You become a total ghost. You remove their access to your energy entirely. Half measures are the ultimate luxury of the naive. Ruthlessness, in the defense of your own future, is the highest virtue. Comment, I leave no room for the past to strike back. Seventh, embrace the absolute fluidity of morality. You live your life bound by a strict, inflexible code. You believe that right and wrong are fixed, static lines drawn in the sand. You pride yourself on always taking the high road, even when taking that high road leads you directly off a sheer cliff. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to ruin among so many who are not good. You must learn how not to be good. You must develop the capacity to adapt your personal ethics to the exact terrain you are currently standing on. Your rigid, inflexible ethics make you entirely predictable. If your enemies know with absolute certainty that you will never strike below the belt, they will spend the entire fight attacking your knees without fear of retaliation. You must be completely willing to use the tactics of the shadow when the light fails you. This does not mean you become a mindless monster who hurts people for sport. It means you keep the monster on a heavy chain, ready to be unleashed the exact second survival demands it. Stop evaluating your strategic actions based on whether they are considered nice by society. Evaluate them strictly based on whether they are necessary. If you must deceive a ruthless competitor to protect your enterprise, you deceive them flawlessly. If you must manipulate a toxic, destructive relative to protect the sanity of your family, you manipulate them without a shred of guilt. The outcome is the only metric of success that matters. History does not remember the honorable losers. The graves of history are overflowing with polite, honorable men who adamantly refuse to adapt to the brutality of their circumstances. 8th, commit to radical self-reliance. You rely entirely on external structures for your stability. You trust your corporate employer to pay you consistently. You trust your romantic partner to validate your worth. You trust the government to protect your physical safety. You are essentially a passive passenger in the vehicle of your own life, hoping the driver doesn't steer you into a wall. The only safe and certain defenses are those that depend entirely on yourself and your own cultivated courage. Any power, resource, or emotional anchor you do not hold directly in your own two hands is power that can, and eventually will, be weaponized against you. You must become completely, unapologetically, and fiercely self-reliant. Dependency is the absolute root cause of all human anxiety. When you desperately need something from the outside world to survive, you live in a constant, exhausting state of low-grade panic that it will be taken away from you. The fear of being fired, the fear of being dumped, the fear of being ostracized. When you build the unquestionable capacity to generate your own income from scratch, dictate your own emotional state without external input, and physically protect your own borders, that baseline anxiety completely evaporates. It is replaced by a cold, impenetrable calm. Start building redundancies immediately. Never have only one source of income. Never rely on a single person for your emotional stability or happiness. Build your physical strength daily. Sharpen your mind relentlessly. Read voraciously to understand the mechanics of the world. Become the absolute ultimate asset in your own portfolio. When you need absolutely nothing from the outside world, you can no longer be controlled by it. You have now been handed the exact blueprints to construct an unbreakable existence. The weak and the comfortable will hear these words and immediately dismiss them as cynical, dark, or toxic. They will cling to their fairy tales because reality is too sharp for them to handle. The strong will hear these exact same words and immediately recognize the true mechanics of reality. You have a distinct choice to make right now. You can close this video and return to the comfortable, fragile illusion you woke up inside today. You can go back to being entirely predictable, entirely usable, and entirely vulnerable, or you can step into the cold, unforgiving light of truth and begin building a fortress out of your own resolve. If you choose the latter, you know exactly what needs to be done next. Subscribe to the channel, fortify your mind, and never let them break you.